This is a female text. Those are the first words of Doireann Ni Ghriofa's unique, interesting book, Ghost in the Throat. Is that a challenge? Is that a statement of fact? Is it a complaint? All those things I think, are answered in the course of the book, and I think the book was a really enjoyable read, and I'm very glad I read it. But it is unique. It's in part a memoir. It's in part historical fiction. It's in part a translation of an old poem. It's in part kind of an homage to motherhood. It's feminist in its outlook and its desire to kind of challenge the Western idea, traditional Western idea of women kind of subsuming themselves to the needs and desires of family and men. It is a lot of things, and as I'll say again, to me, a really enlightening, often beautiful and enjoyable read. Our author, Doireann Ni Ghriofa herself, is a mother of 3 young sons, and she will, in the course of the book, have a 4th child, daughter, who's has to spend some time in the neonatal ICU. She spends her days doing chores, cleaning up, taking care of kids, doing the shopping, taking the kids to school, doing laundry, preparing meals, and she seems to be satisfied with that. As a matter of fact, you know, in some ways you could read the book in its opening stages kind of an homage to that idea and the joys of motherhood. And I don't doubt that the author felt them very much, but at some point she is reminded of a poem called "A Keen for Art O'Leary," which was created by Art O'Leary's wife, whose name was Island Dove, created in I believe in the 17th century, the 18th century. She created this keen, which is a poem of grief, essentially. She created this keen after his murder, and that keen was eventually written down and eventually became a really important piece of kind of Irish poetry. But there wasn't a lot known about Island Dove other than about her marriage to Art O'Leary, and that she was the mother of sons, and that's who she was historically. Well, our author becomes kind of obsessed with the poem, and she's going to translate the poem into English, even though she doesn't have that background as a scholar. She's going to track down every fact she can find out about Island Dove, trying to, you know, rescue the woman from the pages of history which had just reduced her to the title of mother and wife, and then the author of this poem. And so she tracks down all kinds of historical leads. She does all kinds of research. She becomes obsessed in, you know, perhaps an unhealthy way. And as she becomes more obsessed and more involved in doing this research, she begins to emerge, and the author of the book begins to emerge from the pages as a person who isn't just a mother. And I don't say that pejoratively at all, but as someone who we clearly see had ambitions. At one time, she wanted to be a dentist, and that failed. And we see kind of her struggles in her youth with her mental health, and how that might affect her today. And we see her kind of struggle with this idea of perhaps, you know, having a 5th child and getting back into that routine of being a mother, of breastfeeding, of pumping breast milk for children whose mothers can't produce milk, which is one of the things she spends a great deal of time doing. But, you know, slowly she begins to kind of emerge as more of a person, and we begin to find more of a person, but beyond just being a mother, just as she hopes to rescue Island from just being remembered historically as a mother. And we find out kind of obliquely that in addition to doing this research, she herself is writing poetry, as is true of Doireann Ni Ghriofa. She was a well thought of poet. She wins a number of grants and awards that allow her to improve the condition of her family, and she begins then to emerge as a very different person perhaps than she started off the book as. What begins in the reading to me, and I may be misinterpreting this, but what begins in the reading to me as a book which really seems like it's just going to be an homage to motherhood. Well, not ever, at no point does our author, reject motherhood or regret motherhood or in any way regret anything she's done, but we begin to see her emerge from that and to become a person with a lot more facets than just that. And that process, I think, was fascinating. I think it was really, really well done. She eventually realizes she's not going to be able to learn a whole lot much more about Island Dove, but we are learning a whole lot more about her, and she's learning a whole lot more, I think, about herself and her desires and her abilities, and I think that makes it a fairly uniquely feminist statement, both as a mother and as a poet and as an intellectual. I think Doireann Ni Ghriofa is making all those statements in this book. At times the writing is just really, really lovely. I think that Ni Ghriofa, who is a poet, and if you can search her name, and I'll put her name in the show notes or in the title. You can search her name, and you can hear her reading poetry, her own sometimes old poems and things like that. And she has a real lyrical gift for writing, and that comes through in the book. So I just wanted to read kind of one passage to give you some idea of what her writing's like. This is fairly early on, but it's also a passage where I think indicates that for the first time perhaps the author is, expressing some dissatisfaction with the position of women and how women are treated historically and in her own time also. So this is called Instructions for Making a Marionette. 1. Fold a page laundry smooth. 2. Repeat. Repeat again until the paper pleats resemble a pale accordion. 3. Sketch a female silhouette. 4. Use a sewing scissors to snip a woman out of it. 5. In lifting her female outline from the cuttings, you are birthing her from the page. She is not alone. Observe how they all rise hand in hand. 6. Remember this lesson. In every page there are undrawn women, each waiting in her own particular silence. So, number one, I think there's some lovely writing there and some lovely ideas, but also I think it is an indication of what we are supposed to pick up as we read the book, what we're supposed to remember about women and how traditionally they have been, reduced to to labels like wife and mother, and reduced to this kind of anonymity, like with paper dolls or marionettes, as she calls them. And I think it's a really powerful image, and I think it's a really powerful book. Anyway, there you go. There's my review for A Ghost in the Throat by Doireann Ni Ghriofa. If you've read this book, I'd really like to hear what you think about it in the comment section down below. If you haven't or are curious, you can ask me questions. Whatever you want. As always, thank you for watching.